recycling, obviously there's been a change in the recycling world. The commodities market for recycling is not good. So what does that mean? It means China quit buying our crappy recyclables. We tended to have we being the country, tended to have high contamination rates in those recyclables. So we would send shipping containers of that stuff over there. They then sorted through it. They decided ultimately as a country that what they were getting was not good product. So they locked us out. That resulted in that stuff sitting in shipping containers all over the world.
That and the scientific processes to make boards out of plastic as opposed to wood was too expensive. It wasn't just that it was commingled, but the processes to make stuff out of it is not a good market.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
And so some of the technology's got to catch up.
Right,
there's some issues there, absolutely. And so what that's resulted in, though, is what used to be actually we got paid a small amount for recyclables, say $20 a ton, give or take, say 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now we're having to pay for the actual disposal of the materials, so the sorting. That's right. It's up to $41 a ton now. So this commission was faced with the decision point today. Do we do one of three things? One would be to continue recycling, pay the higher rate for the disposal, and that would result in an approximate increase of $1 per household per month for the citizens who were currently in the county's franchise area. Number two, continue running the recycling trucks, keep the recycling cans out there, run it as if everything is normal, but we're actually going to take your stuff that you're thinking you're recycling and we're going to throw it in the landfill. Or number three, take away your recycling can, call it a day, and just simply do away with recycling entirely. The cost benefit there this year would have been $0. In next year's contract, it would have saved about $1 per month per household. So, of those three choices, guess which one the commission did? Sheriff, you want to guess?
No, I'm not going to.
You don't want to? You're not touching this one? Is that what you're saying?
This is not my area. This is not my expertise.
You're going to stay in your lane?
I'm going to stay in my lane.
Okay.
But as a typical attorney or attorney fashion, he cages the question.
I was merely setting the
like
table.
a push pole.
He couched it perfectly.
So let's have a little counterpoint there, Commissioner
By all
Boyles.
means, you're up.
Commissioner Boyles did not vote for the motion, and I made the motion to do number B, because in essence,
Not number two.
Well, he called it B, but number two in your reference, number two. Because the market, if it does come back, we'll keep the cans at everybody's home, because then we can start recycling again. But the market went exactly like I told them, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, I guess, when Commissioner Goodwin and I voted. It's Goodwin, not Godwin. We voted not to pass our contract because it had an increase of people on their recycling. And they also got a new expensive can, which they had to buy the can. And then their monthly rate went up, and we voted against it. And for the very reason that item number one meant that we either had to up the fee that our citizens pay and or take all the money out of our reserves. Both of those were not palatable to me and to what I've been talked to about my constituency. So I did it, and it passed. The truth about this, it passed 4-1, and Commissioner Boyles voted against it.
Does that
I understand.
do I have to filter my garbage now?
No, you can do whatever you want, because we're going to tell you that we're recycling, and we're going to tell your kids that we're recycling, but we're not actually recycling. And so I think to use Commissioner Ketchell's term, we're running a sham now. We're telling our citizens. No,
I think I said it was a sham because it's been a sham since we passed this contract, because they were doing it then. And I said then that the market was going to get worse because China and South Korea and Japan did not buy.
Crystal ball.
They did not. Well, no, I'm saying to you, I had vision because I talk to people that do this internationally, and they say don't buy any stock in any company that's building stuff out of plastics that are going to China or Japan or South Korea, because it's a losing business.
Sure. Agreed.
That was my vision. It wasn't that I was that smart. I just had people tell me that. That's why I voted against it. And it has been a sham, because the whole time this contract's been going on, we probably went from 10% being thrown in a hole like everything else to probably 50 to 60%. So it's been being thrown in the hole, except for a portion of it that they could separate. It was not, and you said, I think we have a 25% contamination rate. So,
and by a hole, he means it goes into a licensed landfill that is linered. But so, no, to your point though, the first issue with recyclables is that you have to recycle right. So if you don't put the right stuff in the can, you could create contamination issues. We run nearly a 25% contamination rate. That means out of every 4 pounds that goes in there, 1 pound is stuff that's not even recyclable. So the styrofoam cartons that go in there, for example, they're just not recyclable. recyclable. The other issue is that some of that contamination then results in entire loads being contaminated. So if you put liquids, food waste, lots of other things,
Hazardous,
plastic bags, which gum up the mechanisms that are supposed to be sorting those recyclables, that then takes a larger quantity of what would otherwise be recyclable and actually takes it out of that stream and puts it back into the waste stream. My point is, let's at least be honest with folks. Let's don't have the false veneer of recycling if we're not actually recycling.
Well, and that's what I said in the beginning. I don't think we've been totally honest, but I don't think we knew to what extent it was until recently, but I always knew that it was not all being recycled.
Well, now none of it is, just to be clear, but we will still be running the recycling truck through your community next week. So, I don't know, it'll maybe something akin to, well, I'll leave that.
I think
alone. I was going to have a Santa Claus analogy, but we're not.
I think there's still hope that in time, some of these processes that makes use of this material, it may change, and when it does, we'll be ready to start back up again. Because in our heart, we want to do that.
No, I agree, but the problem is, and that's why we continue running it and pay the surcharge that's necessary to keep providing that service to our citizens, because you're going to make a lot of folks mad. We're going to anger a lot of people by continuing to charging them to run the system, but not actually providing them the service, not actually recycling it. I think we're doing more harm by today's vote to long-term recycling in Okaloosa County than, frankly, either of the other options at the end of the day, because it's disingenuous and it's going to be viewed that way by a majority of our constituents, and we're going to catch hell for it.
See, I don't, and I think it's not disingenuous because number one is totally out. We cannot rob the reserves or charge them more.
Sure you can.
It's no. And number three is we just quit it and just say we're not going to recycle anymore ever. And you'll make another segment of your community very, very mad if you do that. And where do you store all these cans? I mean, they have to be picked up. I mean, I made a joke that we wanted our vendor to do it, and he says, those are your problem.
Because we bought and paid for the
Yeah,
cans.
so I mean, I really don't know that number two is the only option right now.
Well, it was three bad choices. There's no doubt about that. The future, I think, says that we will build the capacity in the United States to process that material and reuse it, and the system will improve and prices will go up. That's probably 5 years down the road. So.